Kelsey, are we recording?
We are.
All right.
Looks like we've admitted folks, so I think we're ready to go, Jansen.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar on AI in the automotive supply chain. Before we get started, regarding questions, if you don't mind, just go ahead and chat your questions in the window there as we go through this. We've reserved some time at the end of the webinar to make sure we go back and answer those questions. So we would appreciate that. The goal of the next 45 minutes is to share what we as automotive solution experts are seeing in the industry, specifically around the area of supply chain. Thanks to COVID, we're all experiencing unprecedented disruptions. But the good news is, with advances in Azure and products and services and AI, companies now more than ever can actually adapt and manage these unforeseen disruptions. By the time we're done today, you will understand why all this talk around getting data into the cloud and embracing a modern manufacturing platform is so important, and the steps that you can take to achieve supply chain resilience. So let's get started with our presenters. My name is Jansen Davidson. I'm the director of the Modern Data Platform for MCA Connect. I'm joined by Doug Bulla, our Vice President of Solution Development and our automotive expert, and Richard Doak, Automotive Technology Lead at Microsoft. He's going to share his observations in supply chain and what Microsoft's commitment to that to the industry looks like. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Richard.
Thank you, Jansen. Can you guys hear me just fine today?
We sure can.
Perfect. I apologize, everybody. I'm at the airport, actually going to have this very conversation with a retail fleet and logistics. So this isn't a problem, as everybody read the news this morning. It's not a problem just for automotive. It's worldwide, and there are a lot of folks trying to figure out how to solve this. But we're here to talk today, thank you, Jansen, about automotive. And I'm really excited to hear more about what MCA Connect is doing to help our customers in this difficult time. As you said, Jansen, we continue to hear about the automakers having trouble getting all the manner of parts, raw materials, and a variety of reasons, including this COVID-related plant shutdowns, logistical problems involving shortage of chips, shipping containers, truck drivers, and of course, the difficulties suppliers are having with job retention, believe it or not. I think we saw that on the news this morning as well. And all of that is making the cost of the current supply chain crisis much larger than earlier estimates, leading to much higher costs for automakers, car buyers as well. Chips are just one of the multitude of extraordinary disruptions the industry is facing, right? Including everything from resins, steel shortages, and as we've just talked about, continuing labor shortages. Interesting fact, as I was looking into another customer in automotive, that Malaysia is the home to the suppliers and factories serving these semiconductor manufacturers. That country accounts for 13% of the global chip assembly testing and packaging, and 7% of the world's semiconductor trade passes through Malaysia, where then it may undergo some added value, some local factories, added values, combining with other parts before being shipped. Why I point that out is that's adding to the further delays and, more importantly, that lack of visibility into their supply chain. So many organizations face supply chain challenges that can be addressed through digital transformation, which I know that's what we're here to talk about today. Yet, what I'm seeing is, and we're going down to talk about this today, is organizational limitations making this transformation difficult. Applying supply chain needs, such as tracking battery and recycling versus purchasing new, will also add to this growing frustration within the industry. But part of that, what we talk about culture and transformational change, is today's disparate and disconnected systems that I know MCI is going to talk about today, that prohibit companies from gaining that end-to-end visibility into their supply chain. All outdated technology can create a lack of business continuity during disruptions, or lead to an inability to rapidly adapt to these changes that are happening, like I just mentioned with the battery recycling, and the customer's change in demand. Next slide, if you don't mind, Jansen. So that leads us to what are we seeing in Microsoft and that digital platform that allows the ability and flexibility to move faster, to take on the new demands, to add this AI-driven model to help you create a vision for a more resilient supply chain. And I look forward to MCA Connect talking about how they're helping the customers do this and integrate and centralize the data and the decision making, and using AI to assist with that decision making. This introduction of AI, consolidation of the data, enables the automation, data-driven decision making, leading to improved time to decision making and trust in that decision being made. It also helps with the end-to-end visibility, which is what we're all looking for, to better understand the logistical costs, impacts of scheduling, and better resource management. And of course, agility to enable that future function and services that meet the future demands, such as battery recycling. Then we may, if we do all this, we may be a better understanding and trust, which is most key conversation that we're having with our customers today, trust in their ability to answer questions like, should we build versus buy materials? Do we pack it ourselves locally? How do we look across all the dynamic moment in time decisions and make better decisions? And purchase new versus recycle. So Jansen, I'll hand it back to you. From a Microsoft perspective, like I said, I'm going to go down and have this very conversation. But we're here today to hear about how MCA Connect, a trusted Microsoft partner, is helping customers develop an AI-driven supply chain. I really appreciate the time today.
Richard, we appreciate your insight and what you are doing and what Microsoft is doing to address this. As we talk about building a resilient supply chain, it really does mean to start embracing a modern manufacturing platform. And before we can even start there, we got to understand and drive to some improved business outcomes. A lot of tendency is to start this with technology out of the gate. We at MCA, we start with strategy and driving business strategy. As a means to that end, we at MCA Connect, we have 3 domains of proven areas of expertise: manufacturing strategy, implementation management, and manufacturing intelligence. As Automotive Partner of the Year by Microsoft, we're committed to a business strategy-driven approach and how we implement. This takes the form of, again, a manufacturing strategy. What is the strategy? Let's define one. We're going to use a connected blueprint where we identify and we align to goals and financial targets. We're not starting this journey right at it with technology. We're going to use automotive plant assessments or Gemba walks where we can actually understand your business. How do you make the parts you make? What do your processes look like? What's the technology landscape that you're using? What does that look like? And how might that be actually hurting you? Doug and I just completed a Gemba walk for a plant here in Ohio. And it's amazing what 8 hours at a plant will do and the information that you'll get back. We were able to spend time with basically the global materials group, and we got to understand, again, their challenges. When we got into technology, we learned that they had 13 to 15 disparate systems at that one plant, and that they had planners using Excel to help try to synchronize the data between all these systems. We have tremendous experience in workforce adoption. This is critical because this is where we're going to preserve and protect that investment and realize the investments that are being made out of the strategy. This is where we're going to make sure that the workforce is aligned to those strategic goals and objectives. Again, using that the plant walk that Doug and I just had, when we got into these conversations around, well, what's the corporate strategy look like? We were told basically, well, it's hanging on the break room wall. As we get into implementation and management, MCA has over 20 years as a trusted implementation partner. Over those 20 years, it's yielded critical business process and gaps that we've resolved with our own IP. Products like under Automotive Connect there, a product like bid response management. This is a system we developed, a CRM system built on D365, specifically built for the automotive industry. It's products we built like shop floor automation, or what we call OEE Connect. This is a power app that combines what the operator might be doing on the shop floor, tracking his and documenting his observations on this app, combining that with the machine data so that the company and the plant can start maintaining and tracking to critical KPIs. All of this with the goal to drive manufacturing intelligence. We want to help our customers harness the data they have, and they have a lot of it, to start driving to supply chain resilience. We've all learned that with supply chain, it's not just about gaining visibility. It's not just about looking at dashboards of seeing where your parts might be. It's got to be taken one step further. It's taking that step further and allowing AI, allowing your systems to now take action based on those external events. If you take that to the context of shop floor, it's taking that vast amounts of data from your PLCs, your SCADA systems, your equipment, and feeding the Azure IoT Data Hub. So you can do things like have automatic or automated real-time work orders and repair orders. Not scheduling a work order between shifts after you might have scrapped 150 parts because, let's say, a production oven stayed too hot for too long. So with that as our backdrop, I want to transition the conversation to Doug Bullough, who's going to talk about AI and drive the conversation about AI and building a resilient supply chain. Doug?
Thanks, Jansen. What I want to take you through now is a specific example that we recently performed for a prospect. And it really does highlight the opportunity that is available and the challenges that our customers face when it comes to getting to that next level of capability, specifically along the lines of artificial intelligence and machine learning, and how to leverage those capabilities to take us from a system that's surfacing information to a system that is actually acting upon information and making decisions and making changes to existing data elements. So the need was very simple. It was to take a focused look at the supply chain from a material flow perspective and a material perspective to see what we could do from reducing the amount of issues we had, as well as being able to react faster. And what would it take for us to successfully pull that off? So we looked at it from a very straightforward Gemba walk, which is one of our components on our connected blueprint. And we focus primarily on end-to-end inside of a facility process, and taking a look at best practice. What are the solutions that are going into it? What's the operational excellence? And the tools that we used are very simple lean manufacturing tools. We had a focused value chain that we delivered out of this process, and a Kaizen opportunity pick chart. And I'm going to take you through those two examples of the focused value chain and how that connects to the modern platform. And for this specific example, we'll show something that's probably similar to everybody that's out there, but is somewhat unique to the prospect. And then the opportunity pick chart, which is really how you focus and prioritize your incremental improvements as you try to get to your ultimate goals. So this is fairly common. When we looked inside the plant, we saw what I would expect to see in almost any automotive or discrete manufacturing facility around that I've been involved with for the last 35 years. We had a demand plan that flows into something of a smooth production plan going out over 3 to 6 months, and then we got into the next level, which is what are we going to build per shift? And then finally, coming out of what we're going to build per shift, we had what do we need our suppliers to provide us both on a short-term window as well as potentially on a long-term window for long lead time items. Now, the value chain says, yes, this is our starting point, but what you have to do is you have to push back on each one of these and go back to where are the sources of information coming from. So for a demand plan, again, this is going to be fairly standard for the automotive industry. You have industry projections available to you. You have of course, your inbound EDI and your Del 4s and your 830s. You have bids that are potential awards or bids that are being awarded to you. And then you have your safety stock strategies. And all this is flowing into what is a true demand plan for your company. Now, these elements, if you look at where do those elements exist in your organization today? Are they in a traditional ERP? Are they in your sales and ops planning? Are they in your MES? Are they in your Excel spreadsheets on somebody's desk? Those are the things that you have to trace back to figure out exactly where you stand in order to enable the information and enable that next level of AI. If we go to the smooth production plan, again, this is pretty standard information. I have material, manpower, machine, and tooling constraints. Now, maybe you don't have tooling, maybe you have other fixtures or molds or things of that nature. But for this organization, those were the basic drivers to how I created a longer term smooth production plan. However, if you drive back, at this organization, OEE was used for machine constraints. Multi-part tooling and tooling management was used to drive tooling constraints. Your material constraints, in their case, they had a lot of overseas materials coming in, so inbound containers, and specifically, what are the supplier constraints? What can our suppliers realistically provide us through their manufacturing processes? All of those things came into play into what I would call the long-term material constraints. And then, of course, on the manpower side, you have capabilities and certifications. So if you take this information again and you start saying from an OEE perspective, and we could drill back even further in detail. For instance, OEE, which is comprised of 3 major measurements. Well, those 3 major measurements impact your demand planning and your smooth production plan in different ways. But for the effort of this session, we kind of kept it at this level. Where's your OEE? If you're using OEE for your key performance measurement for machines, where does that exist? Where's your tooling information? Where is all this data in your environments today? And then finally, getting down to shift schedule. The shift schedule, well, you've got shift manpower constraints, and shift manpower constraints can be as dynamic as who shows up for the shift today versus the capabilities that you need. And you've got, in their case, they had an hour-by-hour chart, which they were tracking manually on the shop floor, and that was getting keyed in by the operator. And then at the end of the shift, it was getting put into an Excel spreadsheet by the supervisor. So as you go through this, in order for me to use artificial intelligence to start adjusting my demand plan, or to use smooth production plan, or to smooth my production planning, or to even get to the point where I have the system changing shift schedules based upon actual velocity of what is being produced, say in the hour-by-hour chart, or by who is showing up for the shift. All of those things have to be in the modern automotive platform in order for the system to go to that next level of eliminating the need for an individual to collect and track this data. And certainly all of these components need to be aware of each other, and you have to have this information up. So as we looked at this, and then finally we had suppliers, which had, of course, the traditional material constraints is going on. So as we looked at this, it kind of falls into the same algorithm, and I want to show you exactly what's going on is, as we identified all these key drivers to, taking the supply chain to the next level for this organization, we really found, and again, this is not unusual, we see this all the time. What we found was this: we had all kinds of 3-letter, 4-letter acronyms, software solutions running out there. We had all kinds of data reports coming out of those. But then we had these Excel spreadsheets, which really represented human beings pulling information out of these systems or supplementing these spreadsheets with actual data, say the hour-by-hour chart coming off the shop floor, at the end of the shift, which really doesn't give us a whole lot of ability to predict what we're going to do next shift. And then, of course, it was all stratified by our traditional departments through the supply chain as we look at a manufacturing facility. And all of this stuff is hindering our ability to get to that artificial intelligent machine learning process. So totally keeps us from being able to compete, profit, innovate, and specifically to leverage that next level of machine learning to start acting upon these information. So in order to look at this from what I would call a modern automotive platform, you have to make sure that the key elements of whatever of these incremental solutions or software solutions that you have in-house, you have to have this data organized in some level of a data estate, which means that you've got to be able to take the information out of these systems and have it in a single place for Azure and for the machine learning and AI to go above it. But beyond that, you have to also drive a whole section of what I would call organizational drivers that are a level of almost what I would call the secret sauce or the components that you typically would find in those Excel spreadsheets or with those individual people that are out there in the plant. And you have to have an ability to collect your hour by hour data, hour by hour, and it has to be in the system. You have to be able to track your OEE as you're running, and to know, well, if my lost time is running at a certain percentage, then lost time means that I really, can't produce. My cycle time is off on these products I'm trying to run. All of this stuff then impacts each other at a varying level. So the concept is getting our data into the data estate, elevating it and filling in the gaps where those solutions aren't collecting or managing the critical data that you need for whatever value chain that you're looking at, and then having all of that available and ready in the Azure environment so that you can start having different components impact different processes. That is number one from what a value chain does for you. So the first step of the value chain is to figure out which of those data elements and which of those systems and what do I need for whatever value chain I'm working on. What am I going to elevate up and bring it through? The next component that you have to focus on is that you're going to be faced, and in this case, this is a good example. The second function that came out of our connected blueprint Gemba was that you've got to take these, in this case, 28 activities, and you have to put them onto what we would call a normal lean manufacturing pick chart, meaning that here's the ones that are we call just do it's because they have high payoff and they're relatively easy to do. Then of course you have your possibles and your challenges, and then you have your ones that you would just plain out kill because the payoff isn't there and they're very expensive to do. So not just coming up with what is the architecture and the data elements you have, but what are the missing things that have to be enabled up into this platform or flat out have to be implemented because we have a gap today. And then taking those and organizing those incremental projects into an agile approach where fundamentally we go into almost what you would call a agile methodology where you sprint these kaizens and you basically take that list and you repetitively run through them, and you take one of them at a time and you roll them through, and you see incremental value increases as you're moving towards your ultimate goal, and you're enabling AI in the areas that make sense as you add these components up. So before you know it, maybe your OEE is impacting your smooth production plan effectively in real time so that your plant manager knows what is his real dollar output going to be for this month based upon what's happening on the floor today, shift by shift. And eventually you get to the point where if you have a velocity issue in your plant and you have your hour by hour chart, for example, is showing you that you're not performing as expected, and you have a capability problem on second shift with who's showing up to work, then you're adjusting what your actual expected output is. All of these things impact the material flow and the material components. So hopefully this makes sense from the approach of doing a Gemba, associating it to the modern automotive platform, filling in the gaps, and then figuring out how to effectively roll through those individual processes so that you can start seeing results in weeks, not years. And you have a solid roadmap to move forward that's tied to your specific capabilities. So Jansen, with that, I think I'll turn it back to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Doug. All right. Everybody see my screen? You see the next step slide?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, you good? All right. Well, as Doug said, when we go down this path of the Gemba walk, the first and probably the most important here is, again, we want to drive strategy out of the gate. And we're going to do that with this connected blueprint. This is where it all starts. We're gonna start to capture executive alignment. We're gonna do a process and a Gemba walk, start capturing real-time data analysis around financials. And probably one of the most important, I think, compelling things we do is we sit down with the SMEs at the plant in this phase to really understand the pain points and understand what the challenges are. So we move to week 2. This is where we're gonna take what we learned for week 1, and we're gonna see where we need to focus. Okay, whether that means based on week 1, we saw, okay, we definitely have to focus on supply chain. We have to focus on manufacturing productivity or automating business processes, or it could be a combination of all of them. But the key here is that we're doing our homework first in week 1. And then, as Doug said and alluded to with his pick charts, by the time we're all done here, we're going to have tangible deliverables. Everybody's going to be crystal clear on what the plan now is. We're going to have a plan that started in week 1. Everybody's going to be aligned. There's no guessing. We're not throwing technology at problems here. We're going to put technology where it belongs based on what we learned through this engagement. So just to kind of reiterate what Doug said is, we're not talking years. We're not looking at boiling the oceans with any of this. We're looking at a small, I'd almost say a crawl, walk, run approach with this so that we can implement AI where it makes sense and again, streamline these processes where it makes the most sense based on what we learn in this engagement. So with that, I am going to, as I promised, we wanted to leave time towards the end for any questions. I'm going to ask Kelsey if any questions had trickled through as we talked.
Yep, so it doesn't look like we have any questions just yet.
Okay.
So everyone attending today's webinar, please feel free to chat any questions into the chat box.
So as you guys might be, if you are typing some questions, I do want to thank everybody for the time today. Our partnership with Microsoft is paramount to our business success. It's been a privilege. I appreciate it. Again, we all appreciate the time you took out of your busy schedule. Please feel free after you've digested some of the information or revisit maybe a recording. If you have any questions or you want to take these conversations to the next level, feel free to reach out to me or Kelsey. We'll make sure you have all of our contact information. And again, we'd love to partner with you and help you walk this journey together. So I'm going to leave just a few more seconds here for any lingering questions. And Kelsey, I'll ask you to close us out if we don't have any further questions.
Sure. Thank you, Jansen. It doesn't look like we have any questions just yet, but I know a couple of people joined here towards the end of the webinar. So if you do have questions or want to get in touch with someone from MCA, just please reach out to us afterwards. We'll be sharing the recording out afterwards, and we can also share this deck out to attendees. So thank you so much, everyone, for attending.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.